I am Avery Cole, 28 years old, and most days I am the quiet sort who keeps her head down and her books balanced. I built a small company that helps restaurants and event halls move money safely. I live in a walk-up with creaky stairs and a desk that still smells like varnish. I do not flaunt anything. I keep receipts in neat folders. I drink my coffee black and late. What I have, I earned one client at a time. What I did not see coming was family. This isn't your empire. It's family money with a new label. The message hit my phone at 2:17 in the morning. Right after my security app flashed red, I drove through the city like a person trying to stay ahead of a storm. In the server room, the glass door sagged on one hinge. A coil of cable lay open like a vein. The demo screen was black. A small silver drive sat in the tray, sealed with a strip of tamper tape. When I scrolled the hallway camera, he lifted his chin to the lens as if it were a mirror. Logan Pierce, my cousin, on the lazy saluta. Then the cutters bit through the line. I stood there and listened to the hum turn thin. In that thinness, I could hear my childhood all over again. Before I go on, tell me where you are watching from. Hit subscribe if you know what it means to keep the peace while someone keeps taking. What they did not know was that the room was only half of where the story was being saved. I grew up in the soft shadow of our family's favorite Logan. He had the sort of smile that made adults exhale and call him promising. My mother, Margot, would beam at him for managing to arrive on time. My father, Daniel, called him a natural leader when he learned how to park a car without scraping the curb. When I brought home an acceptance letter, my mother folded it in half and said, "That's what we expect, dear," and then turned back to ask Logan if he wanted pie. When he announced 3 jobs into a single summer that he was taking time to find himself, my father poured a celebratory drink and called it vision. He was the golden child, and I was the helper. At family dinners, Logan could arrive late and leave early, and the plates would still be kept warm. If I excused myself to make a late-night deployment, my mother said I was being dramatic about a little website. When Logan posted a photo from a rented yacht, my parents shared it to the family chat with a string of compliments. When I signed my first 5-figure client, I brought a simple cake to Sunday supper and set it on the counter myself. The pattern did not appear in one blow. It arrived as a ledger of small cuts. When I was 13, my birthday party was canceled the morning of because Logan had a golf semifinal and we should all show up to support. My mother said, pressing a ribbon back into a drawer, when I graduated from college, my parents left midway through the ceremony to make a charity gala where Logan was pouring wine and networking for the future. The photo they posted that night was all crystal and smiles. I was not in it. Money put edges on everything. The first winter out of school, I took a small loan to launch my product. 3 zeros that felt like a cliff. Logan laughed and said, "So, you are buying yourself an app?" And my father slapped him on the back. I made the payments on time. Every month. The interest was a quiet drum. When my mother needed a procedure insurance would not fully cover, I sent an anonymous payment that filled a gap of $75,000. She called me later. Grateful to a family friend who had stepped in, I told her that was good news and changed the subject. When Logan wanted a deposit for a lease that would let him reset, the money appeared from a mysterious relative. It was me again. $40,000 arranged through a conduit so he would not know. I never told him. I never told anyone. It felt cleaner that way. I kept the keys to my life on a simple ring. The apartment, the office, one spare for the locked cabinet where I keep term sheets and contracts in acid-free sleeves. On Sunday afternoons, I labeled files and wiped down screens. I baked a pan of cornbread and gave away half to neighbors. I wanted a life that did not depend on applause. Little by little, Lattice Pay found its footing. A diner. Then a banquet hall. Then 3 hotels that wanted a smarter way to hold vendor payments until the sound checks were done. A few months ago, we signed something bigger than big, a multi-layered private financing that would, if milestones were met, release $26 million in stages. The paperwork for it sits in a blue folder with a brass fastener. I still run my fingers over the fastener whenever I need to remember that patience is a kind of power. Logan never asked what I was building. He preferred assumptions. Be grateful, we even let you in the family photo. He said once at Thanksgiving, when I suggested we let the caterer pack leftovers for the shelter down the block. My mother shushed me with a smile for the table. My father cleared his throat and changed the subject to the club's new pool rules. If you have ever felt like the reliable one, nobody notices. If you understand why I started sitting at the far end and washing dishes early, people like to say that families are complicated. I think families are arithmetic. You add a little praise here, subtract a little there, and before long, the totals tell you who is expected to serve the dessert and who is expected to raise a glass. For years, I had been the one who got up quietly to fix whatever was broken while someone else told a story about destiny. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was busy. I told myself there would be time later to name what it felt like to be needed but not seen. Then came the night of the flashing red notification and the sealed silver drive. I stood in that room and counted my breaths. The cutters had left a clean bite through the line. The rack labels lay curled like dead leaves. The demo board flickered once and gave up. I picked up the drive and set it into an evidence bag. I took photographs. I wrote the time in a black notebook I keep for anything I never want to forget. When the police arrived, I opened the door with steady hands. My voice held. Shock does that. Sometimes. It lends you a strange, calm. If you have ever been called small by people who depend on your strength, you know the taste that rose in my mouth when I scrubbed my palms at the sink and could still smell copper and dust. I slept that morning with the lights on in the blue folder under my pillow like a child with a secret map. The family has a date coming up, a memorial for my grandfather at a library with ceilings so high a word can echo itself into courage. There will be a buffet with white napkins and the gentle clink of respectful glasses. There will be a guest who believes he can outtalk a camera. There is, in my desk, an old envelope with my grandmother's careful handwriting across the seal. The handwriting that showed up in my mailbox 2 weeks before she died. I have not opened it yet. The lawyer told me to wait for the family to gather. Little did I realize that by the time we stand beneath those tall lamps and the room goes quiet for a slideshow, the arithmetic will change, a glass will clink, someone will clear his throat, and the totals will move. What none of them know is that the footage from the hallway is not the only record. Paper keeps its own faith with the truth. If you have ever felt like the disappointment in your own family, say so in the comments. If you have worn the label reliable, like it was both praise and a leash, you are not alone. Tell me where you are watching from. And if you want to see how this plays out when a camera and a blue folder meet a room full of old stories, stay with me. I will show you what a boundary looks like when it stands on its own legs. Stop. I used to think that time would soften the sharp edges of my family, that maybe as we all grew older, they would come to see me for who I was instead of what I could give. But as the years passed, their demands only grew heavier. By the time I was 25, I had become the silent sponsor of their lives. My sister, Marianne, is complained about her rent every other month. My brother, Thomas, called whenever his car broke down, which was often mother's voice, though sweeter than theirs, carried the same undertone. We just need a little help, dear. At first, I gave willingly. I told myself it was what a daughter, what a sister, ought to do. But then the little help became regular withdrawals from my account. Every month, I sent Marianne $900 for her apartment, Thomas $1,200 for whatever crisis he claimed to face, and Mother $400 toward groceries and utilities. I kept a careful ledger in a leather-bound book, each name marked by date and amount. I doubt any of them realized how much of my paycheck they consumed. What they didn't know was that while I was draining myself to keep them afloat, I was also planting quiet seeds of independence. With what remained of my savings, I started small, just a few freelance projects, consulting work that I fit between long nights at my ordinary job. I lived simply. I kept receipts in neat folders and resisted the urge to complain by my late 20s. I had scraped together $5,000. It was hardly a fortune, but it was enough to begin. I invested in a tiny property on the edge of town, a 2-bedroom cottage that others overlooked because the roof sagged and the plumbing moaned. I worked weekends painting, fixing leaks, and repairing floorboards. When I sold it 2 years later, it brought me $12,000 more than I had paid. That money became the seed of something greater. I never told my family. When they asked about my life, I downplayed everything. Oh, the job keeps me busy. Nothing special. They never pressed. They preferred to think of me as dependable but unimpressive. The one who kept her head down, while Marianne shone like a golden child at every family gathering. Meanwhile, I bought another property, then another. Each step was careful, deliberate. By 30, I had turned those first $5,000 into nearly $200,000. It wasn't only real estate. I built a small consulting firm, hiring 2 assistants who believed in my vision. We worked from a rented office above a bakery, drafting contracts, advising small businesses, and slowly carving out a reputation. My family never asked about my work. To them, I was still just their reliable fallback. Yet, even in those years of quiet growth, I continued to shoulder their burdens. When Mother needed surgery, the bill came to $75,000. I arranged for the hospital to receive an anonymous transfer. She believed it was a charitable fund. I said nothing. When Thomas begged for help with a down payment, I created a loan through a distant uncle's account. He never suspected. Marianne wanted a grand wedding, but lacked the means. Somehow, the missing $40,000 appeared in her budget. She laughed about her mysterious blessing. Never looking my way, sometimes I wondered if they chose not to see. Maybe it was easier for them to believe in luck or outside generosity than to credit me. I told myself it didn't matter. What mattered was that I had helped. But late at night, as I filed receipts and balanced ledgers, I felt the sting of invisibility. The business grew. Within 5 years, we had secured clients across 3 states. Revenue crossed $1.5 million annually. I celebrated quietly with my team over coffee and simple pastries. Not once did I mention it at home. To my family, I was still the daughter with a little website or odd projects. Nothing to compare with Marianne's supposed charm or Thomas's fleeting ventures. Have you ever worked twice as hard to get half the recognition? If you have, you know how heavy that silence feels? My life was proof that diligence can turn into fortune. Yet within my own family walls, I was treated as though I barely scraped by. Looking back, perhaps I should have corrected their illusions. But part of me wanted to wait to let the truth arrive, like a thunderclap. I kept my success folded away like a sealed envelope, knowing one day It would be opened before their very eyes. Little did I realize that the envelope would tear open sooner than I thought. The breaking point came sooner than I expected. It was meant to be a joyful season. My consulting firm had just secured our largest contract to date. One, valued at nearly $2 million, spread over 3 years. I wanted to share the news carefully, but before I could, my sister sent a message. Family dinner. Mandatory. Sunday at 7. I should have seen it coming. The table was set with Mother's finest china, the one she reserved for holidays and visits from church elders. Marianne arrived in a silk dress. Thomas in his newest tailored jacket. Their smiles carried something sharp behind them. After the meal began, Father cleared his throat. We need to discuss the inheritance planning. He said, his words were deliberate. Like a man reading a script. It's time we considered how to distribute assets fairly. I nodded, expecting a normal conversation. But Marianne leaned forward, eyes gleaming. We've agreed that the trust fund should pass primarily to us. After all, you don't have children. You don't need as much. The words struck like a stone. Thomas added quickly. And since you've been helped so often by us, his smirk tightened. It only makes sense that you sign over your portion now, before there's confusion later. I stared at them. My fork, frozen midair. Sign over. Father slid a folder across the table. Inside were draft documents, transfer of interest, relinquishment of claim. At the bottom, a space waiting for my signature. You have until Friday, he said evenly. If you don't agree, there may be consequences. Marianne's voice cut in, dripping with disdain. Look, this isn't your house, your family name, your legacy. You're just here because we tolerate you. Don't make this harder than it has to be. My pulse hammered. You want me to give up everything? Without discussion, Thomas leaned back, folding his arms. You should be grateful we even included you at this table. Sign it, and you'll avoid embarrassment later. Refuse. And we'll challenge every step of your so-called career. People will know you're nothing without us. Have you ever been so betrayed you could hardly breathe? In that moment, I felt the air drain from the room. My own family, whom I had carried through countless crises, was now conspiring to erase me altogether. I tried to stand, but my knees weakened. Mother's voice, soft but cutting, followed me. Family comes first. Don't be selfish. Sign. And peace will remain. That was the moment something shifted inside me. The shock melted into anger, and then into a clarity I had never known before. I realized I had been carrying them for years. Invisible yet indispensable. And now they dared to cast me aside. I closed the folder gently, sliding it back across the table. My voice trembled at first, then steadied. No. Marianne's jaw tightened. Thomas laughed, cruel and sharp. No, you think you have a choice. You've always depended on us. Without family, you're nothing. I met his gaze. We'll see. That night, back in my apartment, I sat at my desk and opened the locked cabinet that held every document I had ever kept contracts. Receipts, ledgers, bank statements, years of proof that I was not the dependent they imagined, but the benefactor they never suspected. I gathered everything into neat files, I called my attorney, a woman named Clara, who had guided me through each property deal. Her calm voice steadied me. Bring everything tomorrow. We'll be ready. I also reached out to colleagues who had witnessed my sacrifices. One agreed to testify about the anonymous payments I had funneled to cover medical bills and down payments. Another promised to provide records of my firm's growth. Piece by piece, I built a fortress of truth. As I organized the folders into a leather case, my reflection caught in the darkened window. The person staring back at me was no longer the overlooked daughter or the dutiful sibling. Something had hardened my spine straighter, my eyes steady. The victim they thought they knew was gone. They had no idea what was coming. By Thursday evening, I was ready. Clara, my attorney, had arranged the meeting at her office in the city neutral ground. Polished wood panels and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. I wanted no excuses, no claims of surprise. Everything would be documented. When I arrived, Clara was already seated with 2 assistants. She had stacked folders neatly, each tab marked with precise lettering. Property deeds, contracts, bank statements, trust ledger, witness statements. Just seeing them steadied my breath. At 9 sharp, my family arrived. Marianne led the way. Silk scarf knotted at her throat. Lips curved in confidence. Thomas followed, tapping his phone as if bored already. My parents came last. Father solemn. Mother feigning worry. They looked like generals entering a battle they thought already won. Marianne glanced around the conference room. All this drama for a signature. Really? Clara. Thomas smirked, dropping into a chair. Let's make this quick. Some of us have actual businesses to run. Clara folded her hands calmly. That depends on how you define business. I remained silent for a moment, letting the weight of their smugness hang in the air. Then I slid a leather case onto the table and unlatched it. Marianne raised an eyebrow. What is this supposed to be? I opened the first folder and pushed it forward. These are the deeds to the 3 properties I purchased over the last 5 years. Paid in full. Title in my name only. Their eyes flicked down to the papers and then back up to me. I continued, laying out the next file. Here are the audited financials from my consulting firm. We closed last fiscal year with revenue exceeding $8 million. Current contracts project double that within 2 years. The room fell, still. Thomas blinked rapidly, as though the numbers were in another language. And this, I said, sliding another folder across the table, is the trust ledger. Every payment I made on your behalf, medical bills, mortgages. Even the down payment, Marianne claimed, came from a distant uncle. It came from me. Anonymous transfers routed through Clara's office for discretion. Marianne's face drained of color. Father tried to clear his throat, but the sound caught awkwardly. This must be exaggerated. A bookkeeping trick? Clara leaned forward, her tone clinical. No trick. Verified by third-party auditors and cross-checked with banking institutions. If contested, this will hold in any court. Silence pressed down, thick as fog. Finally, Thomas sputtered. That's impossible. You 8 million. You don't even. He stopped, words failing. I met his disbelief with calm for years. I let you believe. I was the dependent one. That illusion suited me, but the truth is, I built this without your help. While you dismissed me as the afterthought, Marianne pushed back her chair abruptly. This is absurd. If you really had this money, why keep it secret? Why let us think? Because I cut in sharply. I wanted to see who you were without it. And you showed me every time you sneered, every time you took what I gave without thanks. Every time you told me I was nothing. Mother's eyes brimmed with tears, though I knew they were not for me. We just wanted fairness. We didn't know. I pulled one last envelope from the case and set it gently in the center of the table. This is my will. Drafted last month, it stipulates that not a single dollar of my estate will pass to anyone in this room. Instead, scholarships will be established and charitable trusts created for families who understand gratitude. You wanted me erased from the family? Consider it granted. The silence that followed was absolute. Marianne's hand trembled against the tabletop. Thomas's jaw clenched until his face reddened. Father sat stiffly, eyes darting for an escape that did not exist. Then came the outbursts. You can't do this. Thomas slammed his palm down. We're your blood. You owe us. Ow, you. My voice finally rose, echoing against the paneled walls. I paid your debts. I covered your failures. I kept your secrets. And all the while, Lord, you spat on me. I owe you nothing. Claire's assistants quietly slid notarized copies of the documents in front of each of them. For your records. One said politely. Marianne's composure cracked. Her lips curled in desperation. We can work together, merge businesses, present ourselves as a united family front. Think of the reputation. I stood slowly, gathering the empty leather case. The reputation you cared about was never mine to share. It was always about appearances. And now the appearance is gone. Everyone in the city will know the truth soon enough. Their faces pale. Stricke, furious, were everything I had imagined in my darkest nights. For the first time, the balance of power was mine. In the days following that confrontation, the silence from my family was louder than any shouting could have been. They left Claire's office with stiff shoulders and ashen faces, yet I knew it would not end there. People like Marianne and Thomas never surrender quietly. They circle back, trying new angles, new disguises for the same hunger. The first attempt came within 24 hours. A bouquet of lilies arrived at my building, the kind Marianne favored at her luncheons. The card carried only 3 words: let's talk soon. I fed the flowers straight into the trash chute. 2 days later, Thomas appeared outside my office, blocking the entrance as clients filed past. His smile was strained, his voice too loud. It was all a misunderstanding. He insisted, we're family. We can't let business ruin that. My security guard escorted him out before he could finish. The clients never asked questions. They had seen enough desperate men in their own lives. Then came the gifts engraved pens, luxury hampers, even a leather briefcase with my initials stamped in gold. Each item arrived without a return address, but the handwriting on the delivery slips was unmistakable. I donated everything unopened to the shelter 2 blocks away. When the gifts failed, they turned to third parties. Old friends from church called, carrying rehearsed lines about forgiveness. An aunt wrote me a letter dripping with nostalgia, reminding me of summers long ago, as though sentiment could erase betrayal. each attempt carried the same message beneath the surface. Forget the boundaries. Return to the role we assigned you. But I had drawn the line. Meanwhile, the legal gears began to turn. Clara filed motions to protect my assets after whispers reached us that Thomas had been speaking to creditors, hinting at access to my trust. He had leveraged family connections before, this time, and he found doors slamming shut. A judge granted an injunction within a week, cutting off any attempt to claim joint ownership. Marian's desperation grew louder. At a charity gala, she cornered one of my business partners, hissing that I had fabricated my financials. He smiled politely and excused himself, only to call me later with the story. Her jealousy is transparent. He said, "Your reputation is ironclad." That validation from people who owed me nothing carried more weight than all my family's words combined. Still, their actions carried consequences. Rumors spread, but not the ones they hoped. Society pages noted their sudden absence from events. Invitation dwindled. Creditors grew cautious. Without my silent support, their balance sheets looked as fragile as glass. I watched from a distance, not with joy, but with clarity. This was what natural justice looked like, the weight of their choices pressing down at last. And yet, I refused to wield cruelty. When Marianne's daughter applied for a scholarship, I made certain she received it funded through one of my charitable trusts, with no signature attached. The children would not suffer for the blindness of their parents. At the same time, my chosen circle grew stronger. Colleagues dropped by unannounced with lunch, saying they admired my resolve. Neighbors invited me to dinners where laughter outweighed any pretense. Clara reminded me during long strategy sessions that strength was not only in standing tall, but in refusing to kneel again. There were nights when temptation whispered. I could have exposed every lie, every hidden debt, every cruel remark they made behind closed doors. But each time, I chose silence. Let them reveal themselves. Truth has a way of rising without assistance. Eventually, Thomas left me one last voicemail. His voice was hoarse, stripped of arrogance. "Please, we need you. Just this once." He did not say why, but the quiver told me enough. I deleted it without replying, because I had finally learned I was not their safety net. I was not their scapegoat. Justice had been served not by vengeance, but by consequence. And in that quiet space, I began to see the outline of a new life forming. 1 year is not such a long time on paper, but it can remake a life. 12 months ago, I left a conference room with trembling hands and a steady heart. Today, the tremble is gone, and the steadiness has settled into my bones. Mornings are simple again. I wake before the sun, brew coffee in a small enamel pot that used to belong to my grandmother, and step out onto the terrace where I keep a row of hardy herbs. The city sounds softer from up here. A pigeon fusses at the railing, a delivery truck sighs, the air smells faintly of rain and hot metal. Peace has a scent. I had forgotten that the office is still modest. 2 floors above a bakery, where the ovens start humming before dawn. But the work inside those walls has grown in ways that feel honest. We hired 3 more people this spring. Careful choices. Each of them steady hands with quick minds. Our revenue crossed a threshold I once thought belonged to other people. Contracts extend across 4 states now. The firm's name shows up on agendas I used to study from the cheap seats. When a banker asked me to pose next to a plaque about women who build, I smiled and stood where they told me, and then went back upstairs to finish reading a vendor agreement. Applause is fine. Clarity pays the bills. Evenings look different. 2, on Fridays, the team gathers around a long table we built from salvaged wood. We pass bowls. We argue gently about whether a good tomato needs salt. We celebrate small wins without turning them into parades. 2 doors down, a retired teacher named Eileen hosts Sunday suppers. Whenever she hears someone in the building has had a hard week, I bring a warm loaf and help her wash dishes. That, more than any headline, is where my life grew new roots. A circle of people who show up without being asked, who say they will be there and then arrive on time with a casserole and a kind word. I kept one promise to myself. After everything fell apart, the children would never be punished for the blindness of their elders. Quiet scholarships took shape, administered by a third party. No signatures attached to point back to me. Tuition statements arrive for 2 cousins and a neighbor boy who loves numbers. The balances drop. Their gratitude is a stack of handwritten notes with crooked lines and fierce spelling. I keep them in a drawer and take them out on hard days. The way some folks carry a prayer book. As for my family, there is not much to report. And maybe that is the point. Silence can be healthy when noise has done its damage. My mother's messages come twice a month, careful and formal, all weather and recipes. She has learned to ask permission instead of assuming an open door. When we meet for coffee, we keep to the Shallows gardenias, the farmer's market, a movie she liked. She does not mention money. I do not either. Boundaries sing best when sung softly. My father has retreated into a quiet of his own. He is not unkind. He is absent in the way a bridge can be out, without warning signs. He phones on holidays, asks after my work, then lapses into long pauses. Perhaps he is measuring distances he never meant to create. I wish him well, from across the water. Marianne and Thomas still circle the old narratives, though they make fewer laps around the track. An invitation here, a carefully staged photograph there. A friend spotted Thomas at an event, telling a story about a venture that never got off the ground. He laughed, then looked over his shoulder as if waiting for the old safety net to appear. It did not. Marianne's smiles in public have grown tighter at the corners. The photographer's flash has a way of catching truth even when we face the lens prepared. I do not chase up datas. Let every house tend its own porch. Healing is not glamorous. It is routine. It is the way I learned to switch off my phone at 9 in the evening. The way I built a small reading chair by the window and taught myself to sit without a to-do list. Here's the way I write a single sentence in a journal each night and forgive myself if it is plain. Some days the sentence is only, I kept my word to myself. That is enough. I have found a steadier relationship with the past. I do not pretend that what happened was a misunderstanding. I also do not carry it into rooms where it does not belong. Therapy helped, long walks helped, the work itself helped most of all. There is a special relief in paying an invoice on time, in keeping a promise to a client, in hearing an employee say, I knew you would handle it. Dignity grows in ordinary soil. Here is what the year taught me. Set down in plain speech for anyone who needs it. Family is not the people who claim you when the cameras are out. Family is the ones who bring a folding chair when there aren't enough seats and tell you not to worry about the wobble. Love without respect is not love. It is a contract with hidden fees. Boundaries are not walls. They are gates with locks that you are allowed to use. Saying no is not cruelty. It is stewardship. And here is the hardest one. Forgiveness does not mean return. You can wish someone well and still wish them away from your table. When storms come now, and they still come, because that is how life behaves. I do not call the old numbers. I call Eileen for a casserole pan, my attorney for a clear reading of the wind, on my team for a few extra hands on deck. We do not dramatize. We plan. We document. We deliver. Then we pass around the bread and laugh at a small joke until it becomes a large one. On the terrace, there is a young olive tree in a clay pot. I bought it the week after the confrontation, carried it up 3 flights like a penance, and promised to keep it alive. It did not like the first winter. It dropped leaves and sulked. I kept watering and turning the pot a quarter turn each morning. In spring, it surprised me with a stitch of new green. Right at the tip of a stubborn branch, when I run my thumb along that tender leaf, I think of all that grew back in me without anyone's permission. If you have ever had to choose between the loyalty others demand and the self-respect you owe yourself, I hope this meets you where you are. Have you walked away from a table that kept shrinking your chair? Do you believe blood alone earns a seat in your life? Or do you, like me, look for people who show up and keep showing up? Tell me where you are listening from. If any of this sounds like your story, I would be honored to read a piece of it in the comments. And if you are standing on the edge of your own hard conversation, practice the word no out loud. It fits better each time. People ask sometimes if I regret keeping my success quiet for so long. I do not. I regret the years I mistook tolerance for patience and patience for love. But even that regret has softened into something useful. It keeps me gentle with the young employees who apologize for taking up space, with the friend who overthinks every invoice, with the neighbor who is learning to say no to a brother who only calls when the tank is empty. The road ahead is not a parade route. It is a good sidewalk with a few cracks. I intend to walk it with my shoulders back, a calm mind, and a shopping list. Olive oil, flowers for Eileen, and a small envelope left quietly with the building manager to cover the rent of the new couple down the hall for a month while they find their feet. Some cycles are worth repeating. Generosity is one of them, provided it travels with wisdom. I lock the terrace door and turn off the kitchen light. The city hums. The olive leaves whisper at the window. Tomorrow is another ordinary day. And that is exactly what I wanted. Our story 2, Thanksgiving has been postponed. Nobody is coming. That evening, my mother texted me unintentionally. I was tagged in a family photo. Turkey, champagne. Above the table, a flag, only family. I read it twice. My brother inquired in the morning, is the family trip still being paid for? Naturally, I answered at 8 a.m. I put a halt to all payments, flights, and access. When my parents knocked on the door, they said, please let us in. I grinned and said, Thanksgiving is canceled. As I carefully opened it, nobody is coming. Mom sent me an SMS. No justification, no follow-up. All it took was 3 seconds to declare that years of custom were no longer relevant. I took some time to reflect on the message, the hotel I had reserved, the rental vehicle, and the pie I had purchased from that pricey bakery they frequent. I shrugged after that. Perhaps it was canceled after all. However, I received a notice that evening. I had unintentionally been tagged in a picture from my cousin's account. I suppose grateful for real family was the caption. The picture below showed a table with champagne, gold dishes, a flag over the table, and a table for 12 turkeys. Only family. I read it twice, The tags did not include my name. I wasn't seated at the table. Without me, though, they were undoubtedly laughing, eating, and celebrating at my parents' house. I didn't text or call. I simply stared at the picture as if it were an unfinished joke. My brother was still paying for the family vacation when my phone broke at 7:42 the next morning. No salutations. No embarrassment. That's all. After a minute of staring at his message, I wrote a single word. Of course. After that, I opened my laptop, put a halt to the flight reservations, terminated the Airbnb, suspended the vacation insurance, and denied them access to the family account, something I completely control. And they still don't get. They were at my house around 8 a.m. with my dad knocking on the door as if it were an emergency. Behind him, my mother was yelling my name. Like, it would still have meaning if she shouted it loud enough. I grinned as I carefully opened it. The door was not slammed by me. I didn't shout. I simply stood and listened to them speak. They had no intention of lying. Well, without you. We hoped it would be less stressful. The last minute was involved. Really, you make it strange every time in the hopes that anything might stick. They flung those sentences like confetti. My mother referred to it as a miscommunication. My father claimed that I was acting emotional once more. With his arms folded behind them, my brother remained silent as he was never required to. He never opposed it. It intensified the quiet after letting everyone else cut, that he intervenes to reap the rewards. This is what they were unaware of. Though it was not the first instance. I had never seen it so clearly before. The one with the picture wasn't a coincidence that evening. In a quilt that has been choking me for years, it was simply another square. I began to rewatch each sequence. I made an effort to ignore the birthday until I reminded them. They forgot. That year, my brother acquired an automobile. The moment I settled their taxes, my mother also informed her bridge group, at last, he's doing something worthwhile. My aunt scoffed when I paid for the entire anniversary celebration. Keep the assistants from sitting in the front. I was not invited to the wedding. To discover the house, I co-signed. I developed the business software. I used the streaming accounts to cover my educational expenses. I provided coverage until they stand up. Anyhow, they failed to notice me. They saw a resource. I never had a brother or sister. I was a service, a leg-bearing bank account. And they always took when I gave. They often made jokes about how frail I was and how fortunate I should feel when I remained silent. They even opened the door for me. We can always rely on you. My mother used to say that meant she trusted me. I used to think, I know better now. Since I had never said no, they thought I wouldn't. Not at all. Not when I was left out. Not when I was made fun of. Not when they substituted more practical family members, discounts, or favors for me. However, that banner, only family. The knife was that, as it lacked subtlety, it wasn't hidden in implied meaning. It was obvious, straightforward, and deliberate. A line had been drawn, and I believed them for once. I didn't argue, therefore, didn't compose a dramatic speech like an old film reel. I simply watched the pattern play out in my mind, one scenario after another, second by second, and The same message was hidden behind each recollection. You are not visible to us. Only what you provide. I decided that I would no longer give. I was finally able to distinguish between being exploited and assisting, not because I was upset, and I grinned as their alerts came in like static while I sat in my living room watching the morning. I wasn't attempting to mend things for the first time. Not because I was okay with my screen shining. Isso era mi disc hours ago. The coffee became cold. My heart beat steadily and deliberately. After gazing at the spreadsheet for days, I finally opened it. A schedule of regular payments. Permissions were never mentioned. Privileges were never acknowledged by them. They took over insurance plans, cloud backups, streaming services, domain names, and memberships for rental cars. Bound to me. Password 2 for the login. Take a look at my qualifications. They thought things like the tools I kept in a garage were typical. They didn't bother. Supper. The joint credit card they used for groceries, trips, and even my daughter's holiday presents was the first item I displayed. They didn't inquire. They paused the auto-pay confirmation screen by clicking the first button. Completed. Their authorized traveler status was suspended when they registered a second airline account. No rights as a backpacker. No impromptu family dinner. No justification. The third, loyalty program for hotels. Suspended accounts in the name of the mother, although I had accumulated points for her. The account is currently deactivated owing to many rules violations. Unapproved use. Fourth, Netflix and Apple Television are streaming services. Spotify. I deleted shared profiles. They weren't erased by me. I just rendered them invisible. Not in use. It was turned off by the Ghost of Access 5th, sending email from my domain to theirs. Not many confirmations were sent to us. 6th, a new password was entered via the family account's parental controls. The account was not disabled by me. If they wanted in, I took them out completely. They would have to inquire. It was all silent. Chilly. Surgical. I called people. Good morning. This is the account holder for John Reynolds. All authorized users on the account should have their accounts revoked. Indeed, all of the card numbers that finish in 23, 45, 67, 82, and 1123, with instant effect. Thank you. 3 minutes were spent on the call. No second guessing. No apology. Click. The automated system would respond. Access has been revoked per cardholder request. If they inquired, I repeated the action repeatedly. My spreadsheet had read, canceled lines of code by noon. Suspended, retracted. Logs for access codes are locked out. VPN access has been terminated. My help button had been accessible around the clock. Offline now. I terminated their auto insurance coverage under my policy. The policy was not canceled by me. I simply took their names off. The co-owner status has been removed. They should call me if they attempted to submit a claim, and I would hit decline. I canceled my subscription to their tax service. They ran their own company. Another person could be employed. I inquired with the accountant. I'm cutting off financial assistance. They will receive a back bill for the final fee. The call ended without a word. I gave it time to settle. I sent spreadsheets to each of them at approximately 3 p.m. One-page PDFs. Your recurring charges have been suspended. Shared account access was taken away You can ask for restoration if you need it. I'll also review no drama, no shame, just the facts, screenshot, proof, distinct border. I ignored the messages they sent me. No. E apologise. No. Let me explain. I only sent that one-page email. The remainder of the afternoon was devoted to going over my credit card transaction, logs, home server, and cloud backups. Each odd charge is marked as a subscription for a family holiday gift. I underlined them in red, yellow, and orange. I then removed the ones that were trivial. The things that mattered most were the $19.99 watch party packages, the $7 50 audiobook credits, and the $5 cereal boxes. I didn't erase the 5-figure support for business software, tuition, and debt payments. I made a reallocation for my son's future. I opened a new savings account for Q4 tuition. I transferred the precise amounts marked each wire business software, their company 2020 Smith, medical claim mother, University of State Spring 2025, June 2025. I renamed my accounts. No secret, no, because they could say they didn't know. It would be evident to them. Documentation. This was not a form of discipline. Reclamation was the term. I requested that the bank update my account so that no one could add users without my express consent when I called. Encryption and security freeze alerts. My financial situation reminds me once more. I removed domain delegation, email forwarding, and phone forwarding after contacting the DNS registrar. Not anymore. Your domain is still functioning under their server. I even removed them as emergency contacts on my health insurance. I prefer my wife first. I told the rep, permissions updated by 6 p.m. All notifications were on silent. All logs recorded. All rights revoked. I leaned back. I took a breath. The room felt emptier. Lighter? Why it mattered. Every action was quiet. Avoid fights. Don't shout. Every action was deliberate. Absence of impulsivity. Each boundary was recorded. No subsequent accusations of misunderstanding. Each resource was purposefully redirected or returned to me. I didn't want to make them look bad. All I wanted was freedom. It got dark. There are no fireworks outside. Avoid conflict. The only sound coming from the house is my laptop's hum. Fell into quiet. Perhaps their own walls shook with desperation. My phone exploded. My mother sent me a message. Why we assumed you would comprehend. Since comprehension was no longer important, I didn't reply. Silence surprised me. I anticipated crying and doors slamming, but it was a completely different matter. It was the text that arrived first by midnight. My brother's torrent. This is not possible. Let's visit the bank. The mother is experiencing a panic attack. Don't ignore us. After that, my dad's emails were sent to all of my siblings, aunts, and cousins. John is going overboard. This is how he's always been, son. Perhaps you have your head in the wrong place. The final one, my own father publicly criticizing me around 2 a.m. I stopped noticing the names. The calls started not from them, from my girlfriend's mother. My aunt and my cousin, went into a panic. He fell into a spiral of darkness. Have you noticed his actions? He is erratic. By morning, I allowed voicemail to accumulate dust. I was misrepresented by their version. That's correct. It was just a pattern. Every relative who had ever profited from my generosity but chose to stay anonymous when I was no longer needed sent one email thread after another. He has erratic emotions. He is punishing us without cause. Is it possible to have a family mediator? They remained silent for 8 years before making a proposal. However, I thought, sure, bring the mediator and spread my hands. Calm was not what they had anticipated in the afternoon. My brother arrived without warning. By the front gate, he stood. This is immature. Step outside. Speak. I peered out the window at him. He appeared diminutive. Masks weren't working. I pulled the door open. He rushed in without shouting. Calmly. He began, "Mom is tense." The others, including Dad, are perplexed. He stopped and inhaled. "I beg you, tell us what happened. Please." I was prepared, but he sounded desperate. I stood tall for the first time. I didn't yell or weep. However, every word was heavy. "You didn't remember me until I paid." I gradually disappeared from sight. Transactions took its place. I paused. You went into a panic. He attempted to penetrate vague defenses. I raised my hand. "Let me be done." I took the PDF out, printed out, placed it on the table with the call logs and receipts. Screenshots. The facts are as follows. Every single number, every invoice. Take a look. He bent over, stopped staring. I saw defenses come down. He swallowed them one by one. However, we were unaware. Then it was whispered. Now I'm angry. At us. At me. I gave a nod. After that, it's functioning. I stopped. You always urged me to be reasonable and to think. I was. Therefore, I didn't cause any damage. I took it back. I didn't make things worse. All I did was draw a border. You know where I am if you want to cross back over. He turned and walked away. Then there was a backlash. A message for the group. We'll collect proof. A lawyer will be present. The court will receive our petition. My name was plastered on gossip and threats. However, I sat motionless. I reopened the PDF. Go over my numbers and my words again. I allowed them to be angry. Concurrently. My mother texted me. I apologise. Dad didn't tell me. For my adult needs. This is really upsetting. Uncle, you are loved. I didn't answer. Not just yet. I didn't have to reassure them. I had to be noticed. But that night, the shockwave persisted. My attorney gave me a call. They are threatening to sue for financial damages, emotional harm, and betrayal of confidence. I didn't recoil. Excellent. I claim to have all the paperwork, including all of the notifications and canceled payments. He hesitated. It is airtight. I grinned. They were in full-blown hysteria. Now, words of sympathy were whispered about my name. Whoever asked, I was either a hero or a villain. Paris was split. Tests of alliances. In the family group, they attempted to play a final public post. A picture appeared. The caption for a picture I took as a kid. Do you recall this joyful boy? He must return. The comments came pouring in. We adore this John because he is the sweetest, Please make amends. Thanksgiving is necessary around 10 p.m. that night. I shut down the app. I sat by myself thinking and lit a candle. The pattern snapped as I saw the sound of boundaries landing was a silent relief to me. I could feel my own heartbeat, calmer and stronger. I didn't despise them. Simply concentrate on yourself. I had no desire for vengeance. I desired lucidity. They weren't broken when I went to bed. Their own narratives were being reconstructed. It was unclear. We were unaware that we were misinterpreting it. However, that was no longer relevant. Since I wasn't holding out, they had their paths, court of mediators, gossip group, charitable campaign. I was at peace. On their side, they screamed hysterically. I stopped guarding theirs and quietly documented mine, and I sleep without masking the silence of others for the first time in a long time. The truth becomes indisputable at this point to all of us. Not just myself. No anger. No retaliation. All that breaks their story and resets. Everything is evidentiary. Clarity. The post was scheduled for 9 a.m. A branded, neutral webpage. No emotional appeal. No accusatory tone. Only a timeline. Details include a yearly payment schedule and screenshots of requests from parents, cover my tuition, pay the tax bill, reserve a hotel, and create the Thanksgiving banner. I removed access, and they responded with unredacted excerpts from their group chat. We don't comprehend. He must return at Neina. I just called it Family Ledger. That's right. In a matter of minutes, I hit publish. My site managed the surge in views, comments, and notifications. My cannon shot was this. Once more, the threads exploded. This is shameful. According to some, he's right to show this. Some said, in group chats, a few people shared screenshots. The banner, my spreadsheet, my college pals also added their voices. Whoa, I was unaware of this, but that afternoon, there was no going back. They contacted a family therapist in the area whom they had recommended as a mediator. I saw what you posted. It's disastrous. The pattern is indisputable, not because you're incorrect. She requested that we all meet. I concurred, but according to my terms, location, her workspace, zone free of paper, the agenda, just listening, not providing proof, published already. Later that week, they arrived. My folks, the therapist is my brother. The maximum number of chairs in a circle is 5. The therapist parted. Your public ledger has been read by me. It's comprehensive. Nobody spoke up. She faced them. John has experimented with numbers. Maths cannot be contested. They exchanged glances. Hope flickered in my mind. Mom's voice broke. I was unaware of how much I had asked of him. Dad shut his eyes. Brother looked around. I remained silent. I took a seat. My presence was my boundary. What do you want now? John the therapist asked. I was clear in my speech. Recognition, not elegance. No regrets, only recognition. Space to be their sibling and son. Not to provide for them, a restart. Therefore, the next request is presumed, but inquired. I spoke in a calm, exact tone, not a drama. She faced them. Are you able to hear him? Quiet. Mom dabbed at the tears. Dad gave a slow nod. Brother let out a breath. We made a mistake. Lightning wasn't involved. It was a shift. They posed inquiries. What was the sensation of this? What about us was invisible? Will you ever pardon us? I responded to each. I had the impression that I was following them, not next to it. Did you spot a wallet? No human? Yes. But trust must be restored. They didn't fall apart. They were not angry. They just started to hear. The following day, invitation to dinner at the table. Are my parents only turkey wine, no access, not banner, revocations. But give me a seat. In its place is the banner. Greetings from home. Son, was there magic involved? No. Was everything resolved? No. It accomplished something more significant. It was evident bridges can cross boundaries because it used the truth rather than insults. The public exposure was successful. Instead of conflict, it made room for honesty. It made them think instead of defend. It called for peacemaking, not consent. I sat at the table at Thanksgiving a week later. Not automatically paced. No account suspensions without warning. Just decisions. Instead of making demands, they passed dishes. I was thanked by my brother. I could see it on my parents' faces when they gave me hugs without saying thank you. Balance changes as a result, not by shouting, not in a dramatic way. Clearly, published documentation, the truth, they weren't broken by me. They had to confront what they had long avoided, and I entered to create an environment where I was genuinely seen, not to make amends for the past. Everything changes at this quiet yet seismic moment, but nothing really changes. Just finality, no drama. The hero declares his own truth. At precisely 7:03 p.m., a month later, I got a text. Can we use simple words to communicate? No. Subject, no background, no teasing. There is no pressure. I noticed the number. Mom's still warm from our most recent evening together. I gazed at the fireplace. I considered my own heartbeat steady, not nervous. I returned the type, yes. Where and when she came alone to my front porch. An hour later, no entourage. No. Sir, don't cry. Only her. Sure, but fragile. I pulled the door open. She got up. A fund exists. Yes. I moved out of the way, suggested sitting on my stoop. The sky was getting darker. Humming cicadas. A calm evening. She took a seat. We didn't talk. There was silence for 10 long beats before she finally whispered, "What I wanted was not this." I gave a nod. She bit her lip and glanced at her hands, saying, "I know you were missed. I'm confused. Next, take a seat." I said quietly, "Or leave." I'm present. Tears came. She understood that she needed to prove herself again for her seat. Not because she was sorry. No shortcuts. She extended her hand, removed the obstacle. We were quiet for a while. Then she said something. "You're still standing." I know that it was not a victory moment. It was acknowledgement. I remained resolute. Don't hurry. Don't gi hooks. No, I pardon you. Simply being there. Simply set a boundary. She stood up. I will see you in the future. She inquired. I stopped. I will inform you. That was it. She gave a nod and left. Weeks went by. Occasional texts and quick greetings. No auto pacing. No banners. No seats were assumed. Until she called one night. Dinner with the family. Wednesday. I thought it was just us. I answered, I'll be present. It was a completely different feeling to enter that room. No storm, no heat, just measured tranquilly. We took a seat. I took my plate out. Dishes were passed. They didn't express gratitude. They had a better statement. Boundaries do not close doors, which is why you are here. They respectfully reopened them. That last pause was a moment of reflection. I refused to accept them. Yes. I replied, my value, my boundaries, my territory. They lost the person they used to be. They have a new person, someone more powerful, someone eclair, a person who had lost their invisibility. They had a son, not a supplier, a person, not a pocketbook, not a fixer, but a brother. Last words, I examined their faces. Be calm. Actual present. I assumed this had nothing to do with rescue. It's about coming back. And I regained not only my seat, but also my identity by deciding to arrive on my own terms, because the quietest power isn't always the loudest no. The freedom to say yes once more comes next.